One very intriguing issue. I touched on this yesterday. The things Colin Cowherd said about the Rams being frustrated with Matthew Stafford because he wouldn't redo his contract. And I'm going to assume that it wasn't a simple restructuring. It was the Rams wanting Matthew Stafford to give up some of that $57 million in full guarantees that vested on March the 17th. Kevin Demoff, the COO of the Los Angeles Rams, who was well documented as being one of the people not telling the truth when the Rams were secretly plotting their move from St. Louis to LA. And look, this isn't necessarily a knock on Demoff. They all lie when they have to. They all lie when they need to. He just got caught. He got caught because St. Louis filed suit and was persistent, and the league wasn't able to suck the case into the secret rigged kangaroo court of arbitration, so we found some stuff out. And one of the things we found out is Kevin Demoff had a problem with the truth when it came to what the plans of the Rams were. And once Stan Kroenke bought that property in Inglewood, and everyone said, including Roger Goodell, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, plenty to see here. So when it comes to Matthew Stafford and the Rams and what they were thinking about doing for 2023, they're going to do the same old nothing to see here bullcrap. Football is family, nothing to see here. The two primary bullcrap mottos of the National Football League. So Demoff, appearing on the 11 Personnel podcast, did admit that teams reached out for casual conversations, air quotes, casual conversations about the possibility of trading for Matthew Stafford. Said Demoff on the 11 Personnel podcast, those conversations frustrated me because I think it's trying to inject narratives that aren't there. I know there are reports that we tried to trade Matthew. We were not actively trying to trade Matthew. I know Les Snead, GM of the Rams, has rebuffed that before. It's just not the case. I think if you wanted to be in the reality of the NFL, there are 10 teams this year at least that are going to have different quarterbacks. We were obviously aggressive in remaking our roster in March. It would be naive to think that people didn't inquire about what was going to happen with the player who the year before won the Super Bowl. It's different than whether people inquire whether there are casual conversations. Okay. If Matthew Stafford is untouchable, if he's Patrick Mahomes, you're not even going to have a casual conversation. You're hanging up the phone. You're not even going to listen. It sounds like the Rams were willing to listen. And look, the Rams understand where they are. They know who they are right now. They know that they wrote some checks to win a Super Bowl, and they won it. Their problem was, after winning the Super Bowl, they gave out too much money. Intoxicated still, literally and figuratively, by the aftermath of the Super Bowl when it was Don Julio for everyone. Remember at the parade, Matthew Stafford was walking around with the big old Don Julio 1942 bottle? They paid him more than they should have. They gave him a contract with $120 million that became fully guaranteed after 1 year. It was $63 million fully guaranteed at signing, $57 million that became fully guaranteed March of 2023, March 17 to be precise, 4 p.m. Eastern on March 17 to be even more precise. Would they have loved to have been able to unload that contract? Hell yes, but they weren't. And the thing that Demoff said that really caused me to say BS, and here's his quote. The part that frustrated me was this notion that we were trying to get away from the $59 million, and that was the only way to do it through trade. That tells you that you didn't have an understanding of the situation. Matthew's dollars after 2022 were unguaranteed. We could have walked away this year free and clear for nothing, no future money owed. So there was no need to restructure. If we wanted out of Matthew's deal, we could have just walked away. We didn't have to trade him to relieve the $58.5 million. We could have just walked away. To me, that's where there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what his deal was that drives the narrative, oh, we were desperately trying to get rid of that. Bullcrap, Kevin, bullcrap. Sorry, all due respect, bullcrap. You weren't going to walk away from Matthew Stafford's contract after 1 year. 2 years after giving up all that stuff to get him, you weren't going to walk away with nothing. That doesn't look good. That looks horrible to the casual fans you're trying to court in LA. It looks bad for the organization. It looks like you screwed up. They could have, well, they couldn't have walked away from Jared Goff, but they specifically targeted a replacement for Jared Goff in Matthew Stafford, where they could tuck Goff into the trade package and not make it obvious they were giving up a first-round pick to get rid of Jared Goff's contract. They were very concerned about appearances. It's LA, it's Hollywood, for crying out loud. And it would have been a horrible appearance if the Rams would have, after the 2023 season, just ripped up the contract of Matthew Stafford. Now, it's not entirely accurate that they would have walked away with no commitment, because he did have $1.5 million fully guaranteed for this year. And I don't know whether or not they did an offset in there. They've got a habit of having no offset language. So they would have owed him maybe $1.5 million. That's nothing. So it's essentially zero in comparison to the $57 million that became fully guaranteed on March 17. This idea that they would have considered seriously tearing up the contract, that is baloney, folks. Don't buy that for a second. If you don't believe me, listen to the folks in St. Louis who got lied to by Demoff. They weren't going to tear up the contract and walk away from Matthew Stafford. They weren't going to do that. Now, look, if you trade him or if you cut him, you're looking at some significant cap charges. If they would have traded him before June 1, it would have been like a $50 million cap charge, dead money. The Falcons did it with $40 million with Matt Ryan in 2022. The Rams were looking at $50 million in dead money, but it would have gotten them away from $57 million in full guarantees. You know, they're looking at $31 million next year, fully guaranteed. That's one of the things that happened this year. There was a roster bonus, major roster bonus this year that they owe him, and $31 million fully guaranteed in salary next year that they owe him because he was on the roster as of March 17. So the idea that there was no need to restructure, well, yeah, there was. If Colin Cowherd reported, and I have no reason to doubt this, that the Rams wanted him to maybe take less, and he said no, first of all, why should he say yes? And second of all, why shouldn't they be frustrated when a guy who is an old 35, who can't stay healthy, and that's not his fault. He gets banged around. He keeps his mouth shut. He keeps playing through it. We saw during the quarterback series what these guys have to do to be able to line up and play week in and week out. It is a tough, brutal, physical sport, even with all the protections that quarterbacks have. So do I think the Rams would have loved to have found an escape hatch from the Matthew Stafford contract? Hell yes. And nothing Kevin Demoff says changes my mind. If anything, it makes me feel more strongly. It makes me think he doth protest too much. You don't have casual conversations about a franchise quarterback. You hang up the phone. They were looking for a possible path out of the Matthew Stafford contract. I believe that. And I believe that they were hoping the Jets wouldn't get Aaron Rodgers and that the Jets would call and that they could convince Stafford to go along with it. I don't remember whether or not his contract has a no trade clause, but as I've said before, for franchise quarterbacks, it doesn't matter. If he doesn't want to be with that new team's not going to trade for him. They need the guy who is the key player on the roster to be all in. You don't want some reluctant participant who's doing the bare minimum as your quarterback. So I call BS on everything Kevin Demoff said. And look, think about what's coming here. The last thing they need as they enter 2023 is this nagging sense that they'd love to move on from Matthew Stafford. They're in the mode now where we got to make chicken salad out of whatever we have. We got to make the best out of this season, whatever it may be. We got to sell. We got to attract attention. We got to do the best we can in a bad situation, born of the fact that they won a Super Bowl. But this idea, it's laughable that they would have walked away from Matthew Stafford and torn up the contract 2 years after giving up 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and Jared Goff to get him. Although we know one of the first-round picks was tucked in there to unload the Goff contract. But if we look at it the way the Rams want us to look at it, that we wanted Stafford so bad we gave up 2 1s, a 3, and Goff to get him, all the more reason to not get rid of him after 2 years. And then 1 year after winning a Super Bowl, 1 year after getting drunk on Don Julio and giving him $120 million fully guaranteed as a practical matter, $63 million fully guaranteed with the $57 million kicking in. Do you really think they would have cut a guy 1 year after giving him $63 million in full guarantees? Do you really think they were going to cut him? Do you really think that? Anyway, look, I don't want to pick on Kevin Demoff. We know they all lie when they have to. They all lie when they need to. But when we catch someone in a lie, I like to make a big deal out of it because I hold out this hope that the people who just kind of naively believe everything that a team says, we have no intent to trade Percy Harvin, we have no intent to trade Russell Wilson, we have no intent to trade this guy who we're going to trade tomorrow. When people say these things before they're proven to not be true, and I try to say, hey, folks, that may not be true, I get shouted down. Oh, how dare you deny what that person is saying? Why would you not believe what they're saying? Because they all lie when they have to. They all lie when they need to. It's part of the strategy of football. It's an outgrowth of the deception that happens on the field. I've said this time and again. You're rewarded for successfully deceiving your opponent during the game. The draw play. You're trying to make them think it's a pass. Oh, no, it's a run. The play action pass. You're trying to make them think it's a run. Oh, no, it's a pass. The zone blitz. Oh, that guy's dropping into coverage. That guy's coming. Oh, we thought he was going to blitz. He didn't blitz. Oh, we thought that guy was going to drop into coverage. He blitzed. Every trick play you've ever seen. It's a product of trying to fool, deceive, lie to the opponent. And that mindset trickles over. There's that military approach. Got to keep all of our secrets. Got to misdirect. You're not going to tell anybody who you're thinking about drafting. You don't want anyone to know what your plans are for free agency. That's part of it. So I think that keeps people from really having a clear line as to when and where you should just tell the truth. And I think for something like this, there's no reason for Kevin Demoff to tell the truth. And I think the truth is they would have loved for someone to make them an offer they could have accepted and sold to the world as a reasonable alternative to keeping Matthew Stafford around. Because most average fans would have said, why in the hell are you getting rid of the guy that just won a Super Bowl for you? Why are you getting rid of a guy you gave up all that stuff for 2 years ago? Why are you getting rid of a guy you just gave $63 million to for one season? $63 million for one season is what he would have gotten if they would have cut him, especially if there's no offset language in his contract. That's something I'm making a mental note. Let's see if I can remember. You know what? Instead of that, bear with me while I make a literal note to myself. Stafford offset language. I'm going to try to get my hands on his contract and see if it's in there. That makes it even more ridiculous that they would have cut him after 1 year. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.